Welcome to the next episode of Beyond the Couch with me, Graeme Wood from Rapid Change Hypnosis. And today I have Lisa Forsberg, all the way from Australia. And she is a hypnotherapist who specialises in working with narcissistic abuse. So, Lisa, over to you just to let us know who you are, what you do, and how you work.
Thank you very much. It's awesome to have a chat with someone on the other side of the world at my dinner time, at your breakfast time.
Very early.
I love it, love it. Yeah, so I do specialise in narcissistic abuse recovery. Now, I did not lay awake at night as a little girl dreaming of becoming a narcissistic abuse recovery therapist or hypnotherapist, because it's not really a very sexy type of thing to get into, if you know what I mean. But obviously, well, not obviously, but for me, I ended up in this type of work because narcissism was something that I had been affected by for a long, long time in my life. So for me, my story began when life was actually really, really good. And I had just got married, moved to the country, bought our dream home, 2 kids. I had a nice little comfortable job at our local bank, and life looked pretty fabulous on the outside. And my sister invited me to a group hypnosis session, which was all about healthy eating. And I went along and I thought, this is really cool, this hypnosis stuff. I really, really enjoyed it. So long story short, I ended up seeing that hypnotherapist for myself as a client. So I'll come back to this story in a little while. But what I do predominantly is I see most of the time women who've been affected by narcissism, but I do see men as well. But I see people online all over the world, and I see them face to face. Now, narcissism, toxic relationships, dysfunctional relationships, we can call them different things, but it's predominantly people who've been affected by the same type of thing. So they come to me because they've either come out of these type of relationships or they're still kind of navigating their way out of these type of relationships. And they tend to find that they've really lost a sense of themselves, because they've been in a relationship where there's been a lot of manipulation, a lot of lying, perhaps there've been some infidelity, there's possibly been coercive control, they've had financial abuse, sometimes physical abuse is involved in that as well. So you can imagine that when somebody has had that type of experience, we've got incredibly low self-worth. We've often got anxiety, depression, people really not trusting themselves. They feel like they can't make decisions. They're concerned they're going to get something wrong. That trust in themselves is really gone. And they're really not great at setting boundaries. So we've got a whole arc of things that people are being affected by, which is when they end up in my office. So, yeah. So were you going to ask me a question then?
I was actually going to ask, can you define narcissistic abuse, exactly what narcissistic abuse is?
It's such a big thing. It's pretty hard to define it in definitively, but it tends to be where there's been a pattern of behaviour. Now, narcissistic abuse can occur in different types of relationships. Predominantly, I work with people it's been intimate partner relationships. But it can be in a workplace with a boss or a colleague, or it can be with a parent or a sibling. But say if we're talking about in an intimate relationship, there's a pattern that tends to be fairly common. So they meet the person and there's a really intense period of love bombing where the person is just loving that person like crazy. Intense, lots of gifts, got to see them all the time. You're my soulmate. You're the most amazing person I've ever met. I've never met anybody like you. All of that stuff. Very intense, and it moves very quickly. So often the person is wanting to move in with them within a couple of months, proposing, marriage, committing financially, going on overseas holidays, things like that. Once the relationship has moved quickly along and the narcissist, will say, is feeling quite comfortable, things start changing quite quickly as well. So they might start to just make little sarcastic jokes about that person, make little remarks where they belittle them or criticize them, and it just slowly chips away at that person's self-esteem and that trust in themselves. When the person will kind of question back about that behavior, it's often covered up with, I'm just joking, you're being too sensitive. So then there's just that constant pattern of undermining the person, eroding their self-worth and their confidence. And then other little things can happen, like the financial control can sneak in, isolating people from family and friends, so that the person that they're in the relationship with only starts to trust that person, so that the person is then isolated, family and friends are gone, they're very controlling about who they spend time with, perhaps even where they work, if they're allowed to work, that type of thing can change. So we've just got a whole lot of manipulation and control going on.
And so, well, obviously we know that when people are in that situation, a lot of time they don't realize it, or their self-worth is so low they feel there's no way out.
Absolutely. And what we find too, and this was the experience that I have, because I had a long-term relationship where that was my experience too. I had no understanding that what was going on was dysfunctional or abusive. You know, there's a lot of things in our society and the way that we've been raised that also make us doubt what's going on. You know, people say things like, relationships are hard work, nobody's perfect, you know, oh, maybe they're just that way because of ABC, you know, they had childhood trauma or they're going through a hard time. And so people tend to tolerate because of so many different things. One of the things too with anyone who is narcissistic is they're not showing that side of you day one or week one, right? There's been that period of really leading you along to believe that they're your dream come true, prince or princess charming, right? So it takes a long time for it to creep in, and by the time it does, you're invested.
Yeah.
It might be, you know, months or years before the true them comes out. So then you're already invested, possibly financially, possibly you're married, possibly you've got children. So then you're in it, right? So trying to get yourself out of that web is very, very complicated. What I found from my own experience and with a lot of the people I've worked with too is that if you grew up in a dysfunctional family, where perhaps you had a parent that was hot and cold or manipulative, or there was violence or other things like that, when you then attract a partner because our nervous system finds this person comfortable, right? We're not noticing that there is a pattern of dysfunction here. So I grew up with a mother who was very hot and cold, who was quite manipulative, who would give the silent treatment for hours, who would smash up the house when she was angry. I thought everybody grew up like that.
Yeah.
Turns out that's not the case.
Now, certain behaviours do tend to get normalised when we see them. And
you're right, exactly.
So then when I met someone, met
someone else who behaved like that, yeah.
So, so if you, and I'm sure we all know people who, when we looking from the outside, we go, why are you still with them?
Why are they with them? Like, I wouldn't be with that person. Yeah.
What advice would you give to that person if they know someone who's in a narcissistic relationship, and they either don't realize how bad it is because it's become normalized, or they feel there's no escape, they have to be with them because no one else will have me? What sort of advice could you give to that person on the outside to try and help their friend who is caught up in it?
That's a really, really good question, because if people haven't experienced this type of relationship, they have trouble understanding why anyone would stay, as you said. I think the first step is gentle, and that's the really important word, gentle education. And sometimes it might even just be, you know, giving them a brochure from something they've seen, or perhaps showing them some things on Facebook or YouTube or Insta or something like that. being very confrontational about it is very, very challenging from somebody in that situation. What I say, I've got a lot of people say whose daughter might be in that situation and they're very concerned about it. My best advice is to be a safe place for that person to land. Just listen and support. Try not to judge and give advice too much, because if you say something about the partner, you could drive them away. And you've got to understand that that partner is probably already trying to drive a wedge between them, those people anyway. They're trying to isolate them. So try your best to just listen, gentle advice, but be a soft place for that to land if and when that person does decide to exit the relationship, because you don't want that person having nobody to turn to at the end of the day. Yeah.
And so when the client comes to you, they've exited that relationship and they need that help to regrow their confidence and self-esteem.
Yeah.
How do you work with them?
First session, obviously they're talking to me a lot. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of, I don't know who I am anymore. But my first session is always a really good deep relax and nervous system regulation. Very first place to go. Myself and a lot of people who've experienced that experience are hypervigilant all the time, really waiting for something else bad to happen. They've lived in a state of chaos for quite some time, not knowing what's going to happen from one moment to the next. So calming that person's nervous system down is key, number one. I tend to do a series of 8 to 9 sessions, because we're covering a whole lot of there's a whole arc of things that we need to cover when someone's been affected like this. Second session we do around understanding that all of the relationships we have throughout our life are there to teach us a lesson one way or the other, whether it's a positive lesson or not, but we do some work around that. And then I always do some inner child work, because as I was saying, often there is a history of growing up in some dysfunction as well. And I'm with 99% of the clients I've worked with, there has been something that's gone on with childhood as well, which has made that the behaviour that they found themselves exposed to as an adult, like you were saying before, has made that seem normal to them. I do some work around them taking back their power. We then do some work around them discovering who the real them is. As I said, so many people find themselves not knowing who they are after this situation. We do some work on then meeting their future healed self, which is a beautiful, beautiful session where they can see that. And then we do just some integration where we bring it all in, letting go of all of the toxic people, situations, all of those things that they've experienced, and walking on into that new healed space. It's beautiful.
It is. And for people watching this, if you are at that very, very early stage, that very first stage, and you said the breathing for the nervous system reset, can you give us a little example of that so anyone watching can follow it and realize how powerful your breath is?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So interesting how you and I were talking about the chakras before we were on here.
Don't mention that in public.
But one of the things is, my background before hypnosis was I was trained in yoga as well, a yoga teacher. So I love yoga. I love breathing. I love how it all comes together, these modalities. And so one of the things in that first session I do is I get them to breathe in the different colours of the chakras and how they correlate with the different parts of the body. So I ask them to breathe in the colour red, knowing that they are safe and secure. So that correlates with the base of the body. Breathing in the colour orange, activating their passion and their creativity back into their stomach region. Breathing in the colour yellow, that place of power and self-trust in their solar plexus. Breathing in the colour green, that self-love. Feeling that self-love reactivate in the body. Breathing in the colour blue, activating the space in the throat so that they can speak their truth again. Breathing in the colour indigo, activating their intuition and their self-trust. And then the colour purple, which is from the crown chakra and connection to universal energy, and just balancing out that system again.
And it may sound woo-woo. I am not down this way, but I use colours with breathwork, and it is so hugely powerful. So
isn't it? Yeah.
There will be some separate breathwork videos going up, and I'll get you to record a separate one for that.
Yeah, absolutely. But isn't it interesting? You would find all the time too, particularly when clients are new to hypnosis, and they will actually say, I saw all these colours, I saw all these lights. And, you know, it's something that naturally happens to a lot of people. We don't even need to bring in the colours, they see it themselves.
So you say you work online and in person, and we know you're in Australia. How can people, those that are watching this, who are inspired and want to reach out to get help, how can they contact you?
Well, they can find me on my website. So I do call myself the Healthy Hypnotherapist. So I'm at thehealthyhypnotherapist.com, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook there as well. And people can jump on and just have a chat with me, see me face to face, ask me any questions about my process and how I work, and see how that fits for them.
Well, Lisa, it's been lovely talking to you. It's been very interesting.
Thank you.
And I love the way you brought your own personal story into the way you work now, which I think is all good hypnotherapists have that. They have that burning passion behind why they do what they do.
Absolutely.
It's been lovely hearing that. And I wish you all the best. Hopefully you're going to get lots of people contact you from this. I want you.
Yes.
I'm going to put all your contact details in below. Absolutely. And if you're enjoying these podcasts, please hit that subscribe button down below. If you're not, let me know why, and I'll make sure they're better for next time. So Lisa Forsberg, a healthy hypnotist, or healthy hypnotherapist.
Healthy hypnotherapist.
I'll put those contact details in. Thank you so much for your time. It's been lovely talking to you. And Absolutely. I'll see you all on the next one. Bye.